Well, I don't know what was said about my time as a school teacher with an 8th grade homeroom and grades 4 through 8, assistant principal, and dare I say, well liked by the students and many of the faculty, not all, because there was a political environment. I was only there because of the collapse of the Birmingham school system, and they hired people on an emergency basis. Some of you remember that far back. I don't know. When I gave out homework assignments to those young people, I was very, aware of what might be possible or what might be really impossible. And so I just tried to, rather than have people horrified and thus free to disregard any assignments because they could, I would try to entice them in terms of what they might find out. Well, I'd like to do that again today, but not at the elementary school level, because it's my opinion that grown-ups, or even older teenagers, maybe some others, could benefit from doing some homework. We face on Wall Street, in Washington and beyond, across the world in terms of the Pentagon and beyond, and in hot spots around the world now where things have defaulted to violence, we face a lot of events that call on a lot of people to offer their opinions. That's good. And then I want to try to interest people with a recommendation. Of course, a lot of people hate me very much, so therefore I guess they don't necessarily take my advice. On the other hand, maybe they feel they shouldn't ignore what I'm up to, whatever that might be. Well, I'll tell you what I'm up to. I'm up to suggesting that people who care about current events might hear yet another old fogey say, well, history repeats. And it does. And one of the things that happens is people get confused and disoriented by competing people with ways and means that are very persuasive. And then you might say there's a clearing of the air when people really see through some people who finally take a step, that people can understand for the arrogance that it represents. And with that arrogance, then they begin to think, well, now what else is being done that way? And that's happened lately. I know a lot of people who said what I said years ago about NATO, but not many, and I'm not one of those who say, I told you so, to the wrong people. I don't think it does much good for people who heard opinions they threw out years ago to be told those same opinions now, because you see, they've already committed themselves. They may have committed others to death or destruction or whatever in the name of truth or justice or fairness or survival or prosperity. But instead I would like to point out to others that they can check something like several of the things I've shared today on X rather than somewhere else, that I think maybe might not be threatened. like some would want to threaten the information contained. And of course, for some, they say, well, of course, this is all about Christianity and stuff. Well, the Christians would say everything is about Christianity. And the non-Christians, some of them would say it's everything about their particular persuasion. So, a lot of things cancel out fairly evenly most of the time, but there are a lot of people genuinely unpersuaded by this, that, and the other. They can tell, obviously, that something's wrong. Come in.
Hello.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That's a biscuit and a sausage for breakfast. It's not good. That's a string of folks, who have already made their commitment or their decision, and they're sticking by it. They double down in several ways. Just like some newcomers to the party who thought that, I guess, maybe things have become so resoundingly made for opportunities that they could chime in or join in. Maybe not both. Maybe both all the time anyway, with adversity for me. But anyway, there are some people genuinely confused by what they hear or read or see or what. And they're going to need, I think, to use a little bit more imagination when they think about some of the information, but that if they look at the pretty long collections of stuff about bad faith and cheating, stealing. Some feel that well, it's okay to steal lately the lives of innocent people, beginning early in October and then continuing in the Middle East, and we all know about the grief in Ukraine, or about Ukraine. To dignify mob action, as something else is not something that the Pentagon should be willing to participate in, or NATO and so on. And a lot of things involve saber rattling just to sell more arms, one way or another, as if there's no tomorrow or whatever. So if people take my recommendation to watch and listen to several of the posts or the sharing of information that I've done this morning, you'll see not something as all the rectitude of secular affairs that some people trade in, despite defamation or theft of property or trespass, whatever, all of that can be trumped up into, all the stilted and dignified stuff, that vocabulary that the Pentagon uses, the State Department, and importantly, the Kremlin, or the capitals around the world. Sometimes you can bring it on down in the South, where they have not in any way really done away with what Bull Connor stood for. They've learned to be more clever about it, and to hate anybody who doesn't like Bull Connor or George Wallace. Anybody who doesn't like them is hated. Well, there's a big long list, but they've learned to be less open about some of it. That's the New South. And, well, in several of the things that I shared today, some people said, that the people who are hurt are vulnerable. A lot of people who are hurting, there's illness or bankruptcy or whatever, and some people are predators. I've been victimized not only in the South, but anyway, I'm in the South and I'm reminded of what can happen, that's for sure. But then far-flung people who pivot into martyrdom after they've done something. They say, I meant to do this and I'm a martyr now. They're professional martyrs. And they can pull a rabbit out of a hat, on Wall Street or Silicon Valley or Main Street, and some don't. For example, some people bought Sears and looted Sears, and then finally the corpse, what was left over, the scraps left over, were sold for pennies on the dollar, and would they raise $1,000? There are other things that risk that, but usually, people stick together, you might say, in the corporate world, particularly newcomers who may not have much more than a really good college education. Everybody says that, I guess, about some. Then there are the self-made people. For example, I didn't know it till I watched this thing. Jimmy Swaggart, the one who was pontificating about, other people during the taped comments and what I'm referring to, with the things I've shared, was later exposed as someone who really didn't have even the basics, and yet, he's pontificating, as easily as some of the people who another gentleman said were arrogant enough to cause the Reformation. Well, now there's another group that are famous for their abilities to make the most of martyrdom, and they have a lot of friends. I've been friends with many, but at the same time, while some would say, well, the people in the streets, thousands and thousands of people in the streets demonstrating for better treatment of innocent people in the Gaza area, in capitals around the world. Some people think, well, they just don't know as much as we do about what's happening in any theater where there are also people who are ready to use force. The people demonstrating in Paris or around the world simply don't know enough about one theater or another. And I say, well, that's not the point. They believe in fair treatment, and they know something about that. So, and now, later in the day, it's not even 8 o'clock yet, 8 a.m. here on a Saturday. That's what we're talking about now. The late reports is that the farmers are burning bonfires in Paris because the farmers are fed up with wages and working conditions and regulations. I don't know. I haven't followed that issue. I think it's a very powerful thing that they're doing, but then when they start vandalism, that's when I would be a little bit more concerned, I know that in Brussels, there are people lighting fires and talking about, equity that needs to be fair. So I think a lot of people are upset. The reason I shared several things having to do with this whole things about televangelism and stuff is that I'm in a part of the United States where those issues cover the gamut in terms of morality or the lack of it, and just brazen theft that others in high places and supposedly better vantage points have only jumped on, no matter who is reading over my shoulder. And I've tried to make a distinction between whose shoulder is being read over, and the results have not been good. But when things just get to the point of the Watts riots or something, and I walked the streets of Watts many years ago and met some of the people, and not only there but in downtown LA. I've been to a lot of places and done a lot of things, but I think people have offered really amazing opinions of me. There's motion in the backfield, and the results are very telling, aren't they? Can't do anything about any of it. The only thing is, I'm just glad to be 77 and not 27. But I once heard a lot, when I was 27 and had already made my trip to the Soviet territory, satellite, and other places, But never mind, just take a look. Those of you who have never really looked into scandal and the turpitude that I'm talking about, where it has cropped up where I didn't expect it, and certainly I didn't really expect, for example, the worldwide enthusiasm taking up for the Palestinians. Their plight has been very sad for a long time. And then too, I know what you mean about the theater where so much violence has taken place, and the reports of violence, and the planning for violence. So I would have people look, particularly if they're confused about current events, I would have people look not at the things I've shared on X today with any kind of obsession about religion, but as a lens through which you can see people doing what people do, in particular people who are not necessarily as admirable as some people think they are. Certainly that's my environment now, and it's the environment that many people share. And events since October, have continued to cascade, just like in the United States, the political fortunes of people tend to correspond with one another. If people are sincere, if it's all just a casual, pragmatic mush, and there are no commitments that people hold to, except maybe to lock people up the way they did in the Soviet Union, then there won't be quite the follow-through that is coast to coast. But there are some things that are happening that are happening coast to coast because there is the kind of commitment that people usually admire, but for the humility involved of some of the people involved. And I think if people pay just casual attention to the video that I've shared on X this morning, you'll see that, well, maybe there's something to the notion that maybe people ought to wonder whether they really know what's going on. What those videos show is many people did not know where their money was going. In fact, some, even after the scandals, said they were going to double their contributions. And that's happening today, with politics today. But these tapes are over 20 years, almost 30 years old. But 15, an average about 15 years old. So that was, there are people who are too young to appreciate them now, and who certainly could appreciate them now. And, there's so much garbage going on. I don't know about you, but I don't particularly care for the redundancy of appeals to vote for this kind of person or that. And as far as I'm concerned, I agree with Europeans who say, damn, the United States has this campaigning for president that starts 2 years out and continues all the way through 2 whole years. And people say, well, but we've got a big country, and it's a diverse country, and everybody hadn't been reached yet. That's not really quite true, is it? That's another thing that these shared videos show, that it really doesn't require. What boils down to, it's like putting, a pot on the stove and really overcooking whatever is in the pot, maybe even till the pot is on fire, because it was put there until things boiled to a crisp, so that, and the next thing that happens is the dried out potatoes catch on fire. I mean, we shouldn't do that politically. We shouldn't, say double toil and trouble, and cook and cook and cook and cook till everybody who has any interest in government or citizenship or politics has just really just baked into the bottom of something stuck on a stove. So I don't know what to say, but I think that if people look at these old tapes, they might be interested to know that it's nothing new for people to say, oh my gosh, I have been woke, and now I'm mad as hell. And that's a problem, for me it is anyway. For anybody who believes anything to say, oh, well, no matter what you say, I identify as woke, and what I identify as being woke is to be mad as hell, and maybe as ignorant as hell, I don't know what to tell you about the people who overrun the Capitol on January 6th, They claim to be, very well informed. And then their adversaries say, well, how informed can you be if you think you have to go and rifle through Nancy Pelosi's desk and break windows and whatever? Well, some people say, oh, well, we're like Minutemen, in Boston many years ago. Or, for example, the strikers who made such headway, years ago, sit-down strikes in Detroit, made a big impression. They liken themselves to that, and other people say that is the strangest thing I've ever heard. So we have people in a standoff now. It's boiled down to a consensus. Now many people say the only thing to do is to condemn the wokeness group, because no matter what they do know or don't know, one thing is sure, they're angry as hell and intolerant and dogmatic. Well, so what? That might be some sort of consensus. Now it's thought bad to be a woke person. You need to be well, I don't know what the term would be. If you use the word progressive, well, the people, in La Follette's territory who would still say that, what's wrong with that? Well, a lot of people say being progressive is the problem, like riding a bicycle or something. You have to keep going. I don't know. Some people say, well, we'll just have to start calling ourselves Republicans or Democrats again, and then fight like hell that way. Well, somewhere along the way, maybe people ought to just take a little glimpse at history and see that this whole business of woke is not all that profound. I think that before that, what did we have? We had the Tea Party people. It was We the People, the Tea Party. It was a movement of people who did not want to break windows or hurt people or something and hate. It was a more, not exactly sitting around a campfire and waiting for entertainment, but waiting for some speechifying or something that might be better than just, sipping suds around a campfire waiting for, ghost stories or somebody able to play the guitar. What can I say about campfires and stuff? I know there are places here in Blount County where people do that. In fact, there are even some city parks where they provide for that, but then there are private places too. That's a far cry. Doing all of that is a little bit different from this woke business, which is really an affectation. It may have meant something to begin with. Like, oh my gosh, I have seen the light. I no longer believe everything I'm told. What do they believe? Nothing at all that they're told. That if they don't think of something themselves, then it can't be any good. And if they're ignorant as hell, then that leaves them, I think, in dire straits. But they've figured out that people they've seen the light about something, and so they're angry that they were deceived. That's not the only reaction to new knowledge, but they seize on the idea that it's somehow great just to be angry, and whether you also think that you're a know-it-all or not. And now I think the corners are beginning to turn on that, to the extent people say, oh well, being woke is not very good. It hadn't turned out very well. They didn't say quite the same thing about something similar with the Tea Party thing. That some people don't even know that has to do with any particular event. And I'm not going to. People can find out about what it really means as of a few years ago, if they want to. But looking back on all that, I did wonder where they thought they were going with that. Turned out that it's kind of petered out, fizzled. And I think the same thing's going to happen with this woke thing, because I think people, if they don't look at what I've put up, the video this morning, they're going to find other information, and they'll get some perspective on the whole idea of rabble-rousing and whipping up a lot of anger and righteousness and so on, and do better. But of course, I don't know. Nowadays, things are so bad, and so much is that. For example, I've had some setbacks recently that have been that I never expected. I knew that things were not improving, but I didn't think that they would take such a dramatic nosedive. And then people say, "Oh, don't worry. The fact that things are getting worse, we still think something good's going to happen while all the clever people pivot on whatever they've been doing." I don't know, but I've talked for just at 30 minutes. I think that's a good time to stop this thing and say, I hope everything goes well for you today. What I'll be doing is staying in my room, and a lot of people know why. I won't be found where I've been in terms of tapes, because why mess with futility? That has been. I could claim to be a woke person. A lot of people told me for a long time that I ought to use this platform more often. I would say it that way. But I'm not angry enough to break windows or anything, except figuratively, maybe. All right, well, that's all. Take care, and thank you. I'll tell my people I always do. Thank you for the answers I get, usually in terms of, embedded information along the way so many skilled people do. Bye for now.